Have the new T95 Magic Weapons increased the damage enough for Mage? Can Mage compete with the other combat styles? Is it worth investing in the new weapons? These are some points I want to talk about today, as well as share some people's opinions, including Zenori, MyTralala, and Rosie Posey. I've spent the last week using the new mage weapons and tried them out at various bosses. As a whole, the new mage weapons are good in the sense that they automatically increase the damage output by some degree due to them being tier 95 instead of the previous tier 92 weapons we had before, as well as the new weapon special attack. The issue with the special attack and the Essence Corruption stack effect itself has an RNG element to it. In my opinion, RNG based damage is never good because it's unreliable. You can't go into a boss fight and think, yeah, if I use this spec, I'm going to get around 25,000 damage instantly, because actually, you might get that damage over time instead due to the RNG of the attack dealing all its damage at once. The stack effect is, well, odd. I've not really found it to be all that useful overall because it takes quite a bit of time to build it up. And it's again based on chances of things happening, not guarantees. Although the additional adrenaline gain is nice if you get the stacks high enough. With that said, do the weapons increase the damage enough for Mage? No is the short answer. The damage increase is 100% noticeable, however, and for me it makes Mage feel better than it did without the new weapons. With that in mind, it of course means that Mage cannot compete with the other combat styles in terms of damage. It is sadly still at the bottom of the pile in terms of DPM. Is it worth investing in the new weapons? Well, if you're a Major, I'm guessing you already have. But if you haven't, then yes, they are absolutely worth it, especially since they're pretty cheap already. I don't want to go into too much detail on if you should invest into Mage as a whole, because if you prefer to play the games in terms of using the meta combat style, then no, obviously not. But if you want to Mage because you simply enjoy the combat style, then you should just do it because it's fun. You don't have to be getting the best kill times to be all efficient. You can just enjoy the game the way you want to play. I now want to speak on other people's thoughts on Mage and the new weapons, because I think it could benefit some people, but also because they are way more experienced and better PVMers than I am. I asked everyone the same 3 questions. What are your opinions on the new tier 95 mage weapons? Do you think they're worth it? And how do you feel they have affected Mage being able to compete with other combat styles? We're going to take a look at Zenori's responses first. So let's go into it. Something generally true about magic, melee, and ranged is that you do most of your damage in your damage boost in Ultimate, Sunshine, Berserk, and Death Swiftness respectively. Both melee and ranged have a way to boost their damage outside of their damage boost in Ultimate. Melee has EZK and ZGS, ranged has ECB. In both cases, these are weaker options than the damage boosting Ultimate, but both have utility. My sense is that Soulfire and the Essence of Corruption stacks might end up working a little like that, where they are a decent damage increase outside of a Sun, but don't compare to the damage you can do in your damage boost in Ultimate. It seems as though they are targeting a damage increase outside of Sun. However, most of the time the optimal way to use magic is to hybrid. At high levels of play, the new weapons will probably function as a DPM increase without changing the way magic is used. The Soulfire special attack does good damage, and the weapons themselves deal a higher tier of damage. I do not think the optimal way to use the magic combat style will change very much. The synergy between Sun, Tsunami, FSOA, and G-Conk is very strong. G-Conk also has synergy with building stacks of Exsanguinate and Insight Fear, making it even stronger. To have something that competes with that and doesn't introduce too much power to magic is going to be difficult. I don't think that's probably what they are working around from a game design perspective. As long as damage boosting ultimates remain the strongest way to do damage with each of the 3 original combat styles, then hybriding will be optimal, and anything that increases damage outside of the damage boosting ultimate will be of lesser value as a result. To answer the questions more directly, he says, certainly, they are relatively cheap, have a good special attack, and represent a respectable damage increase. In terms of outdamaging other combat styles, Zenori said, unlikely. We will need to see what people come up with, but I think the only real damage increase here is coming from the Soulfire attack, which is probably like a 10% damage increase all by itself, 30k compared to 300k Sunshine rotation. So as a whole, I really like how much depth and detail Zenori went into this, I'm not gonna lie. Seeing someone at a higher end of PVM going so much in detail and explaining things a lot more, I actually really really like for this. So he literally explained everything in the big first original message. There's not really much for me to say because, you know, I'm not at this higher level of PVM that Zenori's at, and he explained it very, very well. So I think that kind of speaks for itself, and it's really nice to show off a big depth explanation like this for the video, and the actual responses directly to my questions also make sense. I basically said the same thing about the weapons being cheap and they have a decent damage increase as a whole, but then also it won't compete with other styles because it's not enough damage to do so. I actually ended up asking Zenori a couple of additional questions because I know that Zenori is a very high level PVMer, and I wanted to hear his takes on a couple of other things. So I asked Zenori what he felt about the Essence of Corruption stacks. Is it too slow, about right, and the cooldown for the spec? The response I got for this was, feels like the stacks aren't even meaningful enough to be worth building, which I did kind of say they don't really feel like they do much. And then the cooldown, Zenori said, the cooldown for the spec is weird. Things are organized around the Sunshine, Tsunami, FSOA cooldowns. Having a 45-second cooldown is basically a 1-minute cooldown that is easier to use. I think maybe the design was something like you can do it before and after a Sunshine rotation, which might end up being how it gets used, but it's slightly too strong for that use case, so I don't know. Now let's talk about what Tra said. I think they have potential, but with RNG comes more flops. Your damage could skyrocket with how many resets the spec/bleeds have, but on the other hand, you could have a rotation that nothing resets. More games have a pseudo RNG system, where the longer you go without a proc, the more chance it will happen, up to 100% chance. League RNG, Dota 2 RNG, WoW RNG are 3 examples. So I mean, yeah, I kind of get his point here. I don't play the games that he's mentioning, but he explained it well, so it makes sense. And it would probably work okay here if that was implemented, but I don't know if the fights go on long enough for an effect like that to happen. And it also just goes back to what everyone's been saying about the RNG aspect of it. It causes too many issues. We also have Rosie Posey's response to my 3 questions. I think they're decent, but considering the current overpowered state of necromancy and ranged at the minute, they don't quite measure up. Essentially, I don't think they're enough. Currently, players have reached 500k DPM in a Sunshine, and the average DPM with range is even higher. Additionally, I believe the Sanctum Dungeon is making Necromancy overpowered. We haven't even gotten the 4th Conjure yet, and I can't imagine how much more overpowered that will make Necromancy overall. I understand making PVM accessible to all, but at this level, they might as well say free kills without effort for everyone. That makes sense. I get the point that Rosie's going for here. It makes complete sense. And I agree, to be honest. I don't think that the new weapons are enough as a whole, but then there's the good aspects that I've already mentioned before. So I also think this, along with everyone's, is a very good response. Apple said, overall, very good addition to Mage. They feel good in the rotation. The RNG aspect of the special attack adds even more to it. However, there are things that can be annoying to some people. Getting your stacks takes a while, so in some boss fights you're unable to take full advantage of them. Again, I agree with most of this. They actually do feel okay in the rotation. The RNG aspect adding even more to it. It's really good when all of the damage hits at once. I'm less of a fan of when it doesn't all hit at once. So that's kind of annoying, but like, it's okay. And then obviously, yeah, the stacks again are a bit of a problem. I also asked the exact same question in my Discord. Join the server, link is below. We got quite a few responses, so I'm going to take a look at them. Mies said, I haven't really tested them yet. All I can say is Magic was incredibly underrated already. The synergy with melee in a hybrid fashion was already insane. Not sure if adding power to it was needed. I personally think it's good to give Magic a second identity, aside from the crit-based builds. Think this is more economic/learner friendly. Might not be for everyone, but I'm going to give it a go soon. For it being worth it, for sure, it's already below 800 mil for a set. That's incredibly cheap for a set of strong weapons. I agree it's already cheap, and you should definitely buy them. I think it's interesting to see that it does give it a different identity aside from the crit-based build. Adding to that, obviously you're still going to be building your mage gear for about crits, because inside of a Sunshine rotation, you want to crit as much as possible. So having the bleeds on the side is just a little bit of extra damage. You're never going to build your setup for bleeds, because it would be very, very bad. Saying it's more learner friendly, I'm not really sure I agree with, because to be able to use the bleeds, you're still going to be able to do an FSOA Sun rotation, because otherwise it's still pointless to Mage. Noodles said, I've heard that the special attack works with Kuromin, so taking in consideration that the special is like Ricochet combined with Iban's staff is 100% worth. I cannot comment on this, I haven't seen it used, but if so, then it does sound quite interesting, especially as we know that Iban's staff spec is very strong. And then Siesta said, the weapons are great, they boost magic up to be on par with other styles. Magic / ranged are about the same depending on the content, though with them releasing the shard alongside the dual weapons, magic may still fall a little short. Yeah, I don't think that the weapons boost the damage to be on par with the other styles, I'm not gonna lie. I personally, from my experience, don't feel that in game, but it does help boost it a bit more than it was before. And yeah, again, the shard is unfortunately something I've not been able to test, because I haven't completed hard mode Sanctum yet, as well as the shards right now are around 3 billion GP that I just don't have. Make sure you follow the streamers in the video, thank you to them for taking their time, thank you to everyone else who contributed to this video, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe, drop a like, and I'll see you in the next video.